What do you do when growth stalls? When sales stay flat? When competition fences you in on all sides? One of the most powerful and underused vehicles for growth is acquisition. In other words, you grow your company by buying someone else's. Unless you're running a large corporation, the idea of acquisition may seem too complicated or too risky to consider. David Braun, the author of Successful Acquisitions, invites you to think again.
All companies are looking for ways to grow. Some of us are struggling with finding ways to grow our companies because we're in mature markets. And what I find most companies focus in on first, rightly so, is internal growth. They look at adding more salespeople or doing more advertising or bundling their products or repackaging their products. But what they often don't look at is external growth, acquisitions. In many cases, I think it's because they're intimidated. They think it's only for the big companies, the ones that have these massive balance sheet resources and big teams of people to be their M&A departments. But the truth of the matter is 97% of all acquisitions are what we would call mid-market, below $500 million in size. And for many companies, acquisitions can be an incredibly powerful tool.
As a growth strategy, acquisitions have multiple benefits. David Braun focuses on 3 key advantages.
Number one, they allow us to calibrate our business. They allow us to, with precision, move in or out of markets. There's nothing that you can do to move faster than acquisitions to move you in or out of markets or technologies or customers or applications. So that's number one, calibration. Number two is it allows you to pick winners. So it allows you to focus in on identifying companies that have already proven through the marketplace that they're successful and that it's a successful either company or technology or application or location, whatever the case may be that you're focused in on. But number two is it allows you to pick winners. And number three is it's fast. There is nothing that you can do that would be faster than through an acquisition to be able to move you, again, in or out of markets. So acquisitions, while not for everyone, I think are in many cases a hidden opportunity that many companies overlook and can be a very powerful tool in your toolbox to grow in your business.
In making acquisitions, the difference between success and failure hinges on your underlying strategy.
The common mistakes that I see people make when they're thinking about acquisitions is they tend to be very reactive as opposed to proactive with acquisitions. They tend not to think in advance about why I would want to make an acquisition and what would be an ideal company for me. Here's my strategy, here's what I have today, here's what I need, and here's how I'm going to go out and find those companies to come into it. And what most companies do, probably the number one mistake that I see, is that they are reactive to opportunities. So they look at a company that they already know, that's on their radar screen, or most commonly is a company that's for sale. And it doesn't mean that for sale companies are bad companies necessarily, but what it does mean is that a company is reacting to opportunities as opposed to proactively saying, here's our strategy, here's what we want, and here are the kind of companies that we can move forward with.
So there's the problem. Acquisitions fail when they are approached without a proven plan. And here's the solution that David Braun has created based on his 20 years of helping companies grow. A step-by-step roadmap to successful acquisitions.
I wrote Successful Acquisitions because I couldn't find anything out there that was like it. All the books that I saw around M&A were really one of two flavors. A, they were very legal oriented, very much about the legal transaction, the legal documents written almost by lawyers for lawyers. If it wasn't that, then it was very financially oriented, big long tomes about the financial aspects of mergers and acquisitions. Lots of detail about how to look at financing and valuing companies. But again, it was almost written by financial people for financial people. What I didn't see was a business book written for business people. And why I wrote Successful Acquisitions was really to help CEOs and executives of companies be able to put together an M&A process for them and their companies with the language that they're going to be most comfortable with. So my hope for Successful Acquisitions is that the business community is going to be able to have it be something that they can read, but more importantly, something that they can actually use.
Successful Acquisitions is the first major book on buying companies for the small to mid-size market. It's a detailed battle plan for buying the right company in the right way.
So the process that we talk about in Successful Acquisitions is a little different than maybe other books that have been written in the marketplace. This isn't a process that I created and then went and tested on the market. This was a process that came out of my experiences of working with companies all over the world, big companies, small companies, service providers, manufacturing companies, all different kinds of public companies, private companies. And through all of those experiences and seeing the common threads that went through those, I created a process to be able to say, here is, regardless of the industry that you're in, regardless of the size of the company that you are, here's a process that works. Here are the key tools and steps that it takes to be successful at completing a successful acquisition.
Successful Acquisitions gives you a complete roadmap in 3 stages: building the foundations, building the relationships, and building the deal. Lastly, there's the all-important step of integrating the company you have just acquired. Successful Acquisitions is a practical manual filled with tips and examples from real transactions. The book gives you all the tools, checklists, and charts that David Braun uses for the acquisitions he manages day by day.
When I sat down to write this book, I made the very deliberate decision that I was going to hold nothing back. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a book filled with concepts and ideas, but it was actually a book that had the tools and the techniques that one needed to be successful at implementing the concepts and ideas. So, for example, when I talk about the need to have a well-defined prospect profile of the ideal company that you would want to acquire, in the book I go into great detail about the tool to allow you to define the company, have a process to rate and then prioritize those companies. Or when you get to the point in the process where somebody has to make contact with an owner of a company, how are you going to go about doing that? What's that first call like? What's that first meeting like? So I go in great detail in the book about how to go about doing that and what a first meeting is about and what your agenda might look like. So I was very deliberate in saying I wanted this to be a book that was filled with great concepts and ideas, but more importantly with that, the tools to help you be successful at implementing these concepts and ideas.
Successful Acquisitions is the real-world guide to buying companies. If you care about business growth, this is the one book you cannot afford to miss.
I do one thing, and that is to help companies to grow. And to me, that's a lot more than just top-line revenue or financial engineering or deals and transactions. As a matter of fact, I have this saying on my wall in my office that says that my mission is to help my clients implement their dreams. And my hope is that with this book, that owners and executives of companies can take it and get ideas and new ways of thinking about how they might successfully be able to implement their dreams for how they want to grow their business.
Successful Acquisitions can be pre-ordered now at Amazon.com. Enjoy the book and be sure to tell others about this important publication.